Hi class. In this lecture what I want to talk about is exponents and the order of operations agreement. Now if you remember in a previous lecture I've talked about the order of operations, and this order of operations goes parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, so the PEMDAS. Now I also talked about how you remember it by using the please excuse my dear Aunt Sally as a way to remember the correct order of operations, but we'll work some examples with this. Okay, so in this lecture, we're going to go through two things. We're going to go through exponential expressions, what are those, and then we're going to work some problems with the order of operations. Okay, so exponential expressions. So exponential expressions are kind of the following. So repeated multiplication of the same factor can be written using an exponent. So if you have 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 5 times, we can write this as 2 raised to the 5th power. The 2 here, the number being multiplied by itself 5 times, is called the base, and the exponent up here is the number of times it's being multiplied. So you can also do it with a variable. So a times a times a times a is getting multiplied by itself 4 times. So we would write this as a to the 4th. So the base here is a and the exponent is 4. So all the exponent does is it indicates how many times the factor called the base occurs in the multiplication. So when you see something like this, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, this is what's called factored form. It's factored out. And the exponential expression 2 to the 5th, right, this is called the exponential form. So we're going to work with these type of problems here in exponential form. All right, so this is a common problem where most people think it's the same answer, but I want to walk you through them. So I want to evaluate in parentheses negative 4 squared and then negative, notice the pause, negative 4 squared. Okay, so over here, so the negative 4 is squared only when the negative sign is inside the parentheses. Okay, so in parentheses negative 4 squared, we are squaring negative 4. In negative 4 squared, here, this one here, a little different, we are finding the opposite of 4 squared. So when you look over here, negative 4 squared, well, that's equal to negative 4 times negative 4. Well, negative times a negative is a positive, so that would be 16. Here you're squaring the 4 first, so that becomes 4 times 4, and then you have this little negative sign outside. So 4 times 4 gets me 16, and then you bring down the negative, and this answer is negative 16. So when you see these problems here, parentheses negative 4 squared and negative 4 squared, there's a subtle difference in how you will write the answer or show the answer. All right, let's try this. Let's evaluate these. So I have in parentheses negative 3 squared times 2 to the 3rd, and then finally in parentheses negative 2/3 cubed. Okay, so we'll work this one first. So in parentheses negative 3 squared is the same as negative 3 times negative 3 times 2 cubed. So we have to do the exponents first. This is 2 times 2 times 2. So evaluating the exponents first, negative 3 squared gets me negative 3 times negative 3, which is 9. 2 cubed gets me 2 times 2 times 2, which is 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 gets me 8, and 9 times 2 gets me 72. Over here, in parentheses, we have negative 2/3 cubed. That just means negative 2/3 times itself 3 times. So the way we would write this, first, a negative times a negative is a positive, and then a positive times a negative gets me a negative. Now when you multiply fractions, just multiply across. 2 times 2 times 2, 2 times 2 times 2 gets me 8. And 3 times 3 times 3, multiplying the denominators here, 3 times 3 times 3 gets me 27. So this answer is negative 8 over 27 here. All right, so this order of operations agreement, we're going to work some harder problems here. Okay, the way you always do it is you perform the operations inside grouping symbols. Okay, so grouping symbols are parentheses, brackets, or the absolute value signs. Always do what's inside first then. Then you're going to do exponents next. Okay, so parentheses, exponents. Then you do multiplication, division, and you just work left to right, left to right. And then you finally do addition and subtraction, left to right. So you always have to follow this order. All right, so let's try this one. Let's take 6 plus 5 and then in parentheses 1 minus 2 to the 4th power. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to perform operations inside the grouping symbol. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take 1 minus 2. Well, that gets me -1. Then the next thing you're going to do is exponents. Okay, so I have to do -1 to the 4th power. Well, that's -1 times -1 times -1 times -1. Well, that would just be 1. Okay, whenever you have a negative sign to an even power, it's going to be positive. Anytime you have a negative power to an or negative number to an odd power, it will be negative. So then now I'm just left with 6 plus 5 times 1. Work left to right. Multiplication, 5 times 1 is 5. Now do the addition. 6 plus 5 gets me 11. And that's our answer there. All right, let's work one last one. That's a little bit harder, okay? So this is 12 minus 24, and then in parentheses, 8 minus 5 divided by 2 squared. Okay, well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to do what's inside the parentheses. Remember, parentheses first. So 8 minus 5, well, what does that get me? That gets me 3. What do you do next? You do the exponent. So look, I have 2 squared. That's 2 times 2. That gets me 4. Okay, so now I have 12 minus 24 times 3 divided by 4. So you work left to right. Left to right. Do the multiplication. 24 times 3 gets me 72. Now you do the division left to right. 72 divided by 4 gets me 18. So now I have 12. Don't forget this minus sign the entire time. 12 minus 18. That gets me -6. All right, class, when you do these problems, I encourage you just to slow down, take your time, and just remember the order, the steps to order of operations. And if you go slow and remember those steps, you should be able to get these problems very easily.